There comes a moment in your life when everything feels familiar, but nothing feels right. You wake up one day and realize you're surrounded by the same people, the same routine, the same version of yourself. Yet something inside whispers that this isn't who you truly are. That moment, according to Carl Jung, is the beginning of spiritual awakening. And if you're feeling this right now, you are already on the path. Welcome to SYC Soul. Today you're going to discover the 7 stages of spiritual awakening through the lens of Jungian psychology. These are not random steps or mystical fantasies. These are deep psychological transformations that thousands of people go through when their old identity begins to crack and a new self begins to emerge. Jung believed that every human life eventually hits a point where the soul refuses to stay silent. When your routines no longer satisfy you, when your relationships feel shallow, when your goals no longer inspire you, when your old coping mechanisms stop working, that is not depression or failure. It is the first stage of awakening, the call. In this stage, you feel restless. Something begins to bother you, but you can't explain it. You start noticing things you never cared about before. You sense a shift in your values, but you don't know what it means. The call is uncomfortable because it exposes the truth. Your old identity can no longer hold the weight of your soul. The second stage is breakdown. Jung said that before the psyche awakens, it must collapse. This stage feels like losing control. Your emotions become unpredictable. Things you used to tolerate now feel unbearable. You question everything, sometimes even your own sanity. But Jung insisted this collapse is necessary. The ego, the mask you've been wearing, begins to dissolve. And even though it feels terrifying, it is the doorway to your new self. If you're feeling confused, frustrated, exhausted, or emotionally overloaded, stay with me. You're not falling apart. You're being rebuilt. And by the end of this journey, you'll understand why your soul brought you here. Once the ego begins to break down, you enter the third stage, confrontation. This is where Carl Jung's concept of the shadow becomes unavoidable. The parts of yourself you've rejected your whole life now rise to the surface. Your anger, your fear, your jealousy, your insecurities, your suppressed emotions, all come forward demanding to be seen. This is the stage most people quit because it's uncomfortable. You begin to see the truth about your relationships. You realize who genuinely cared for you and who only cared for your old version. See the truth about your coping mechanisms, your self-deception, and the painful patterns you've repeated for years. Jung believed that confronting the shadow is the turning point of spiritual awakening. Without this confrontation, there is no real transformation. You don't awaken by becoming more spiritual. You awaken by becoming more honest. Honesty can feel brutal. You start asking questions like, why have I always ignored my needs? Why do I keep choosing the same kind of people? Why do I sabotage myself right when things get good? Why do I play small when I know I'm capable of more? In this stage, your illusions fall apart. You lose the false sense of security you built from routines, labels, and comfort zones. But in losing those illusions, you gain something far more powerful, clarity. The fourth stage is withdrawal. This is when you feel the urge to step back from people, from noise, from chaos, from expectations. You're not isolating, you're healing. Jung believed solitude is not loneliness, but a return to yourself. In this stage, you begin to hear your own inner voice again. And sometimes, for the first time in your life, you listen to it. If people accuse you of being distant, cold, or different, it's because you're no longer operating from your automatic patterns. You are beginning to observe your life instead of reacting to it. This stage prepares you for what comes next, understanding your true self. After withdrawal comes the fifth stage, expansion. This is where your spiritual awakening becomes visible. Your awareness widens. You begin to feel things more deeply, connect dots in ways that surprise you. You start seeing patterns that were always there but hidden behind the noise of your old life. You question your purpose. You question your past. You question the beliefs you inherited from culture, family, religion, or society. You begin to understand that not everything you were taught was true for you. And that realization gives you permission to rebuild your life from the inside out. Jung said that when consciousness expands, the world doesn't change. You do, and that change makes the world look completely different. You notice how much emotional weight you've been carrying, recognize trauma responses you once mistook for personality traits. You discover energy drains, emotional triggers, and hidden fears that shaped your entire identity. The more you see, the more you awaken. This expanded awareness can feel overwhelming. You may cry unexpectedly. You may feel intense moments of peace followed by sudden waves of emotion. This is normal. Your psyche is reorganizing itself, and then something beautiful happens. You begin to feel compassion for yourself. You realize the person you were wasn't weak or flawed. They were surviving. They did the best they could with what they knew. For the first time, you forgive yourself. This leads to the sixth stage, reconstruction. Jung believed real awakening is not about escaping reality, but rebuilding your inner world. In this stage, you create new boundaries. Start saying no without guilt. You choose relationships that nourish your soul, not ones that drain it. You break patterns you once thought were permanent. You rediscover your inner child, your creativity, your intuition, your voice. This is where you begin to feel powerful again, but not in the old ego-driven sense. Feel grounded, calm, self-aware. You trust yourself in ways you never did before. Reconstruction eventually leads to the seventh and final stage, integration. This is the stage the world rarely talks about because it doesn't look dramatic or mystical. It looks stable, peaceful, and deeply human. Integration is when the awakened parts of you become your new normal. Your shadow is no longer an enemy, it's a guide. Your intuition is no longer a whisper. It's a compass. Your emotions no longer overwhelm you, they inform you. Your past no longer defines you. It teaches you. Our patterns no longer control you. You recognize them and make conscious choices. This is the self, Jung described as the individuated self. The person who lives with alignment, inner clarity, and personal truth. In integration, you don't feel awakened every moment. You simply feel real. You don't become perfect. You become whole. And this wholeness changes everything around you. You attract different people. You take different risks. You speak differently, walk differently, think differently. The world responds to your energy because your energy is no longer fragmented. But Jung warned that awakening isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong process. You may revisit earlier stages. You may break down again. You may confront new shadows. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're evolving. Awakening is not about transcending humanity. It's about understanding it. It's about living with awareness instead of autopilot. It's about recognizing your inner world and honoring what your soul has been trying to tell you. If you're listening to this, you're already on the path. So what does life look like after these 7 stages begin? Jung believed that those who awaken develop a different relationship with themselves. You no longer chase external validation. You no longer cling to toxic relationships. You no longer betray your own boundaries just to feel accepted. You stop apologizing for who you are. You start making choices that align with your inner truth. You stop pretending. You stop shrinking. You stop wearing masks. This authenticity may scare some people, especially those who benefited from the older version of you. But the people meant for you will feel your transformation. They will be drawn to the stability, clarity, and depth that awakening brings. You also begin to understand your past with new eyes. You no longer judge your younger self for their mistakes. See them as part of your evolution. You feel gratitude instead of shame. You feel compassion instead of regret. Your spiritual awakening also influences your emotional intelligence. You become slower to anger, quicker to understand, and more aware of your triggers. You stop reacting and start responding. You don't avoid conflict out of fear. You engage with intention. This makes your relationships deeper, healthier, and more honest. Finally, awakening ignites your purpose. It's not a career, not a job title, not something society told you to chase. Purpose, as Jung defined it, the natural direction of your inner self. It may lead you to create, to help, to heal, to build, to grow. Purpose becomes something you sense, not something you search for. As you move through the 7 stages of awakening, your reality begins to shift. You stop feeling lost. You stop fearing change. You stop doubting your intuition. You begin to trust that everything happening in your life is part of your transformation. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. Awakening is not easy. It's not glamorous. It's not instantaneous. It's a deep psychological rebirth. But once it begins, you can never go back to sleep. Your soul refuses to shrink again. If this script resonated with you, your awakening is already in motion. Let it unfold. Trust your inner world more than the noise outside. And if you want to go deeper, watch the full-length breakdown of spiritual awakening on my channel SYC Soul. Your transformation has already begun.